It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Monster Monday, presented, of course, as always, by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's #1 rated sportsbook. It is a new week, which means we will have a new Spread the Word winner via social media. You guys know how to do that, at Ross Tucker NFL, at Ross Tucker Pod, and a new sponsor confirmation email winner. We got some pretty cool things coming up our sleeves over the next couple of weeks, but maybe even DraftKings. Use the code Ross and get the Sportsbook app on your phone. Boom, it's that easy. We will be starting to take entries for our season-long redraft league this week on the Fantasy Feast podcast, which is now twice a week now that we are in August. Happy August, by the way. And we are kicking it off with a bang. I've been thinking a lot about the undrafted guys like I was and what it's going to be like for them. But I've also been thinking about veteran quarterbacks that are in new places. Not a lot of practice time, not a lot of padded practice time. So why not talk to a Hall of Famer that can answer both of those questions? A good friend of mine, I work with him several times a year at Westwood One. Usually I'm on the sideline looking at the trenches. He's up in the booth looking at the coverage and the route combination. So it works out well. You guys know him. He's Hall of Famer Kurt Warner, and he is today's Big Show.
The Big Show.
Kurt, always good to talk with you, man. Always good to see you. People obviously already know your social media. I believe it's at Kurt13 Warner. Is that right, Kurt?
That is correct.
Good to see you, man. Good to talk with you. And I guess, these days especially, you got to ask everybody, how are you doing? How's the family?
Yeah, it's good to talk to you as well, Ross. I think we're all kind of in that mode with the pandemic and the quarantine that you want to get back to some semblance of normalcy. So it's exciting to be in August and start talking football a little bit. But overall, family's really, really, really well. We're just trying to lay low and do our part and try to figure out, what normal is going to look like come this fall. Kids getting ready to go back to school, what that's going to look like. I've got a son at Nebraska. Is he going to be playing this fall? What is that going to look like? I've got another son that plays football here at the high school level, and we're waiting to see, are we going to have a season? Is it going to be pushed back? Are we going to have it in the spring? But overall, we are healthy. We're doing good, and we understand that we're blessed.
I wanted to tell you, Kurt, I should have told you this last season when we did a couple games together, but after we hung out with you and Brenda, my wife, Kara, and I, at the Super Bowl a couple years ago for a while, my wife enjoyed the conversation so much that she then read Brenda's book, and she loved it. She loved it. Now, she says she reads it, but my wife has a pretty long commute, so she actually listened to the book on tape. But it was cool because she'd come home at night and she'd tell me stuff about you or Brenda I had no idea about, but she's like, oh, yeah, this time and this happened. And I was like, awesome. So Brenda had a big impression on Kara, that so much so that she listened to the whole book.
Well, we enjoyed our time getting to know you guys a little bit better at that Super Bowl as well. And, a lot of people obviously are familiar with my story and my journey, but my wife's got a pretty crazy, pretty incredible story herself. And so I love it when people get a chance to kind of dig into that background and really understand that perseverance kind of runs through the family, not just me and my football career, but with what Brenda has overcome. And, so it's cool to hear those kinds of things and understand the kind of impact that Brenda's had on so many as well.
So, Kurt, you have a really good perspective on things for a lot of different reasons. I think we're now at maybe 40 NFL players that have opted out of this season. Knowing what you know, would you have had any hesitation about playing this year?
Well, I mean, I think there's always hesitation, being a father of 7, having 2 grandkids now. You take all that into perspective. Is that, what's the most important thing? And, how do you manage all of that? Because I think the hardest thing, about a season, in my perspective, and I was just talking to Larry Fitzgerald just the other day about it, is that, you can do one thing, like for me, I wouldn't have worried about what my lifestyle would have looked like, because I would have been easy for me to commit to go to the facility, come home, be dad, don't venture out. You're not looking to do anything. You're going to give 4 months to a season because that's my job. But the hardest part is that as you know, Ross, there's 52 other guys in the locker room, and there's other people in the organization that you can't keep tabs on. And so this is one of those things that, well, it doesn't just mean you don't have success on the field if guys are out doing their thing and focused on other things. This is something that, could obviously affect you from a health standpoint, could affect your family, could affect your season if guys choose to do something. We just saw, I think it was the Marlins, 13, 14 guys come down with the virus. Now all of a sudden the season stops and they have to try to figure that out. And so that, to me, I think would have been the hardest thing was, could I trust the people around me and my teammates to truly commit to 4 months and say, hey, yep, the rest of my life is going to be put on the back burner for 4 months. This is my job, and I'm accountable to my team, and I'm accountable to my teammates and their families. Could I really count on that from guys in so many different places and coming from so many different perspectives than I am as a grandfather or as a father? And I think that really becomes the question, is that we've seen the bubbles and we've seen, we take everybody and we'll put them in this situation. Football is such a different beast because there are so many more people involved in that. And so what does that look like? And so I think that would have been a concern. It would have been a conversation for sure with me and my wife, and to figure out what was the best thing. So it is fascinating to me when you hear about the different things, because I'm thinking about the kids and the family, and you hear people about having young kids, or they have somebody in their family that's dealing with some kind of situation, some kind of health issue. And you got to start thinking about those things and go, okay, what does that mean? Do I not get to see somebody for 4 months? Do I not get a chance to really kind of live the life I want as a family member? So I just think there's a lot of dynamics to it. And like everybody, I'm fascinated to see how this is going to play out, and what happens when that first team or that first group of guys test positive. What does that look like, for the league as a whole, but for that organization moving forward?
How much did it hurt you, Kurt, when you saw that you heard that there would be no preseason games? Because as an undrafted guy, I don't make the Redskins in 2001 with Marty Schottenheimer without those preseason games. And that's how I first made it as a rookie, and then played for a while. That changed my whole life. And so I get it. I'm just sad for a lot of guys that are losing that opportunity. And I'm sure your situation was somewhat similar.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it from both perspectives. I mean, first, as you said, as a free agent, whether it's even making the first team or not, we talk about it all the time, that every time you get the chance to get on the field, you're building your resume, that everybody is looking, every team across the league is looking at guys when they get a chance to be on the football field, whether you're making the roster of the team you're actually on or not. And so those are things that are so important to build your resume and say, hey, I played, you could see it, here's what I'm capable of doing at this level. And so that is disappointing. You're cutting the rosters back by, 10 people. So many guys aren't going to get an opportunity. And I even tell people, when I look back to my journey, the one blessing was, even outside the NFL, there were opportunities to play. It was arena football and NFL Europe. And so at least I had opportunities to play when I wasn't on an NFL roster. Those guys don't even have that now. So they're not going to get preseason. They don't have anywhere else they can go to showcase their skills and get another opportunity. And so it is going to be tough on those guys to kind of break in. And the guys that have fallen through the cracks, like myself, maybe didn't play a lot in college, but can still play this game. And so it is a disappointing thing. But, as we know, I mean, it's different for everybody, and you have to deal with that. But, timing becomes so important in so many of these situations. And, it's going to be a bummer for a lot of guys. And my other perspective was, I liked preseason even when I was a veteran guy. To me, every time I came back, every year I came back, there was a process that I went through to be able to mentally get through that hurdle that, oh, I'm ready to play again, or I haven't lost some of the things that I've been able to do in the past, and you mentally want to get to that point. So there were different times during the preseason, but I liked playing at least a little bit until I felt like, okay, I'm back. I'm good. I'm acclimated to the speed. Now we can start the season. So I even liked it as a veteran from a limited standpoint. And so, again, I'm going to be fascinated to see what the season looks like, especially the beginning of the season, when guys aren't going to be playing any football outside of practice until game one.
So I get asked all the time, Kurt, when I'm on radio stations, how big of a deal is the limited practice time? And I think it's huge up front for the offensive line, just because you're almost always working in concert with a guy next to you. There's always double teams, and you need to just have that no matter what you do on the board or in the meeting rooms. It's just a feel thing. And I'm imagining, even if there aren't that many padded practices, that I'm guessing they'll still have a lot of 7-on-7 work. How big a deal is all those missed reps for all the new quarterbacks and new places with their receivers?
I think certain things can be really tough. I always felt when I bounced around from one team to another, it took about a full year for me to get comfortable with the new language. And that's one of the things is just being in the huddle, calling things with guys, watching guys, run certain things, because, you can bounce around from one team to the next, and, 80-85% of the play concepts or the protections, are going to be similar. It's just that they're called something different. And so what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to hear the play call from the sideline or hear it in the huddle and automatically see what you're supposed to see and visualize what the play is. And then you can just move forward and you can just react. So without having some of that time to be able to do that and see that and communicate it and take those play calls in, I think it's going to be harder for those guys to really get up to speed. And then, with young guys, you're always trying to gain edges or gain understanding or mentally prove to yourself that you can play at a certain level. And, again, that can come at a lot of different times. It can come in practice. Obviously, it can come in preseason games. But, here's going to be some young guys that aren't going to play a snap, have played a snap at the NFL level with this speed and the complexity of both offenses and defenses, will have not played a snap until their first one in the regular season. And a guy like Joe Burrow with high expectations already coming in as the number one pick. It's going to be fascinating to see, are teams able to have the plays that they want early in the season? Do they have to limit their playbook for some of these young guys because they're not going to have very many reps? How does that look for depth? You talked about the offensive line. Do more of these guys have to get more of the reps in practice? And so, your backup and your depth at different positions aren't going to get opportunities to play. So if you have injuries, because we're not, you're not doing anything physical from a tackling standpoint really until you play. And so are injuries going to be up? And how does that affect the depth and the success of a team when that happens? So this is new for all of us. And I think we're all sitting back wondering how these things are going to play out. And I'm specifically going to be watching the quarterback positions, whether it be new guys in, or old guys in new situations, and how that plays out for some of these teams, especially early in the season.
Yeah, because I was going to say, when I think of you, Kurt, I think a lot about, those deep dig routes, especially when you were in St. Louis, the timing of that. And the thing I tell people is I was not a quarterback or a receiver, but I feel like there's a reason why Brady was having all those private workouts down there in Tampa. He knows he needs that time with them. How important is that part of it, to just know where those guys are going to be and have that timing?
Yeah, that can be extremely important, especially when, you're working with new guys and different guys, and that becomes the big part of it, is that, Tom Brady's not going to forget how to throw an 18-yard comeback or a 20-yard dig route. But, there's certain guys that will run it different ways. And so your timing has to change. How guys get in and out of breaks. For us, a lot of times it's body language. that I'm watching a guy, and if I'm comfortable with the receiver, I can see their lean or I can see their breakdown, and I know when I can let a football go. And so that all changes as you move from a Julian Edelman to a Mike Evans. Those guys are different breeds of guys in the way that they play the game. And so I don't think there's any question, as you said, that's why Tom Brady got down to Florida and got some of those workouts in, because I got to get a feel for what these guys do, because that's such a huge part of it, the transition, with one guy to the next, and how they have, just a little nuances in which they run routes or they do things, even though the route's going to be exactly the same as what you had in New England. How somebody runs it is extremely vital from a timing standpoint, and so you can play the game that you want to play.
So you were telling me right before we started the show that you're working on a coaching instruction platform. I didn't know anything about this. What's it all about?
I tell you what, I'm fired up about it. Since I've retired, it's been a decade now. I've coached high school football. I've done individual instruction with guys, college and pro level. I've done a lot of consulting with coaches, and obviously my work with the NFL. But I've always wanted to have a greater reach. I've always felt like, a big part of who I am is the ability to coach and share the knowledge that I have, but never really have been able to figure out how to do that or really had the time to develop it. And so during the whole pandemic, as we've been home, I've done a lot of like Zoom calls with quarterback rooms or coaches around the country at higher levels, just talking about their offenses and kind of breaking it down and giving them a quarterback perspective and teaching them the nuances of the game that I know. And so as I was doing that, I just kept thinking to myself, man, I'm doing this and I'm helping these guys at the highest level. I got to put something in place where I can have a greater impact now that I've got the time to really devote to it. And so the platform is going to be called QB Confidential, and it'll be launching at the end of this month as the season kicks off and high school football and stuff kicks off if we have a season. And it's gonna run the gamut of different things, and that's why I'm so excited, because I think there's so many levels to it. We'll have a classroom part of it to kind of build football IQ in a lot of different areas, from just normal terminology to breaking down coverages to protections, you name it. We'll go through that. I obviously have it on the field component, which I think is such a huge thing that I believe there's a lot of guys that know how to play the game but don't really understand how to throw a football. And so we'll go on the field. I'll dive into the playbook. That's one of my greatest passions, is being able to kind of work on play design and understanding the nuances of why you call plays. I'll be doing a lot of Excel breakdowns like I do on the NFL Network as a higher level way of being able to take that other knowledge and put it on the field and show how these guys at the highest level do it. And then I'll have and I don't really want to call it a podcast, but there'll be a motivational kind of speaking component to it, in which I'm going to, share my journey and share some of the stories that have got me to different places and kind of the mental side of the game. So it's going to entail a lot of different things, but I'm extremely excited about the possibilities. And I think it's going to be able to help people, whether it be players, coaches, fans, at all different levels, to kind of better their game and to learn more about the game and really advance them to a new level. So I'm pumped about it. I'm in the process of building it now. And I just, again, I'm passionate about our game. I love our game, and I love all the things I get to do. But it's going to be a new nuance that I'm really fired up about.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Just as you were talking about it, I was thinking, you know what? Because I went on a bunch of Zooms this offseason too, with some O-lines or teams or whatever. I wish I would have recorded all of them. It's like I was doing them anyway. I should have just recorded and been like, let other people see it. But that sounds awesome, Kurt. I highly encourage everybody to check Kurt out on Twitter at Kurt13Warner. So when Quarterback Confidential is released, you know how to get your hands on it. Kurt, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it. I don't think Westwood One's going to be doing a whole lot of sideline this year, so I don't know if I'll get a chance to see you, unfortunately. But I'll be listening, and who knows, maybe for the playoffs or something.
Well, I hope that we can get something back to semblance of normalcy, and hopefully we'll cross paths. But I'm sure we'll talk down the road, and I look forward to that. But best to you and the family. Everybody there, stay safe. Everybody that's listening, stay safe, and we'll talk soon.
Likewise, man. There he is, Kurt Warner, Pro Football Hall of Famer. That was awesome, just like I thought it would be, just like it's been awesome to have the NBA back and the NHL back. Flyers, Stanley Cup. It should just give us a Stanley Cup now. But if you want to bet whether it's golf or the NHL, or how about NBA? How about DraftKings right now on the America's top-rated sportsbook app? You can get 110 plus point insurance for the NBA. Place a pre-game money line bet on a single game. And if the team you pick to win ends up losing, but scores over 110 points, they get their money back. And guess what? If you've been watching the bubble games, they've been high-scoring games. So that actually sounds pretty awesome. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code Ross when you sign up. For a limited time, all new users can get a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. That's right. DraftKings Sportsbook has a sign-up bonus up to $1,000. Just enter code Ross when you sign up only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. New Jersey, Indiana, or PA only. Bonus comprised of a first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT.
Tuck's Takes.
Hi, Ross. Well, let's start today with probably one of the biggest news items since we last spoke on Friday. The NFL announced that Antonio Brown's 8-game suspension will begin with week 1, whether he's on a team or not.
Right. I mean, I got to be honest with you, Bri. They're still investigating the most serious charge against them, the sexual assault charge. So I don't know. I mean, once they're done investigating that, maybe he's suspended for the whole year. I don't think a team's going to touch him until, why would you sign him now when he could be suspended even longer or there might not be a season? It just doesn't make sense. Or the season could get canceled halfway through. Why take any of that risk or those concerns? The only way you would do it is to have him under contract when his suspension ends. I don't think anybody's going to do that. I think they'll wait till maybe week 5, week 7, they have an injury. They're going to wait till they get a little bit closer to that time and his suspension hasn't been extended and he hasn't done anything stupid and everything's okay, and they feel like they need him, and the season's going. That's when I think a team might actually sign Antonio Brown.
Tuck's Takes.
Players have opted out of playing this season. To name a few, Bills cornerback E.J. Gaines, Jaguars D-tackle Al Woods, and most notably, Jets linebacker C.J. Mosley.
Wow, man. Wow. I mean, C.J. Mosley has gotten a ton of money, and he will have played a total of 2 football games for the New York Jets with all that money after his first 2 years. Now, look, last year he got hurt. It is what it is. This year he's choosing to opt out. He has his reasons. Everybody does. Okay. But really hurts the Jets team. I mean, you lose Jamal Adams and you lose C.J. Mosley. You're talking about arguably their 2 best players when they're both healthy. One gets traded. One opts out. What could have been a promising season for the Jets already feels like it's anything but.
Tuck's Takes.
News includes Bills starting right guard John Feliciano being lost for the season with a torn pec, Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford being put on the COVID-19 list, as is Gardner Minshew, and the Giants giving tackle Nick Gates a 2-year extension worth $6.8 million.
So, I like the Bills in the AFC East, Bri, but there are some concerns now. I mean, Star Lotulelei opts out. They don't really have a replacement there. Feliciano done for the year at right guard. I mean, you're talking about 2 starters in the interior of both lines, so that's not good. Matthew Stafford, remember, you get put on the COVID-19 list doesn't necessarily mean you test positive. You might have just been in contact with someone that tests positive. They're not revealing that. And the Nick Gates thing, so this is the type of thing, Bri, that you won't hear elsewhere, okay? So Nate Solder opts out, which means the Giants are going to have their number 4 overall pick, Andrew Thomas, start at left tackle, which means Nick Gates is probably going to start at right tackle. And before he starts the whole year and has a good season, and people realize he's good and is worth a decent amount of money, the Giants immediately locked him up, 2 years, $6.8 million extension. What that tells you is the Giants think he's pretty good, and the Giants think he's actually going to have a solid year, and they want to lock him up before he goes out and proves he can have a solid year. It's a smart move by the Giants if he's as good as they think he is. I'd also mention, speaking of New York linemen, Bri, the Jets cut Brian Winters, who had been their starting right guard. They wait till now, cut him, probably a cost-saving measure. They signed a bunch of guys. My guess is they'll have Van Roten start at right guard, one of the guys they signed. They move on from Winters. And then the one other thing I wanted to mention while we're talking COVID-19 list and stuff, Doug Peterson, the Eagles head coach, tests positive for COVID-19 as well. It's funny because Sunday night, not funny, it's ironic. Sunday night, I was thinking about the fact that no coaches had opted out yet, and I tweeted that 0 coaches, even though a lot of them are in their 50s, 60s, some in their 70s, had opted out, even though 40 players have. And then like 10 minutes later, Adam Schefter tweeted about Doug Peterson testing positive for COVID. So we'll see. There's going to be a bunch more guys that we find out test positive, I think, over the next couple of days.
Tuck's Takes.
There will not be any enhanced booth communication this season for officials. And do we know what the Monday Night Football television booth is going to look like?
So, yeah, I mean, all that preseason testing, the enhanced booth communication, that flew out of the way. That's gone because there is no preseason. So if they can't test it in the preseason, they're not going to have it during the season. So really all that is different from that standpoint is that there's no pass interference review anymore this year. It appears as if Steve Levy, Brian Greasy, and Louis Riddick will be the Monday Night Football booth unless, Bri, there's no college football, in which case then I think it'll be Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit. So there's kind of a lot up in the air as far as that is concerned. But we'll see. Hopefully there is college football, but if not, sounds like it'll be Herbstreit and Fowler, which will be interesting because they're such college guys. It'll be interesting to see how well they translate over to the NFL side of it. Let's get to an email, Bri.
Ever wanted to ask an NFL player a question? Well, here's your chance. It's time to Ask Ross.
The email address, ross@rosstucker.com. It's really simple. You rate and review the show. You buy anything on Amazon through our link. You take advantage of any of our awesome sponsors from the sponsor page at rosstucker.com that you hear us say. You can ask me any question you want ever, and I love it. What do you got, Bri?
All right, this one is from Mike. Hey, Ross, can't wait till your next obscure movie reference. I really excel in that category. Tell us about your recruiting experience and how you dealt with not being offered to your favorite school. Did they even consider you an offer for you to walk on? What other schools were you considering? How did you get into an Ivy League school? Must have had some good SAT scores, or maybe you were in the chess club.
Good questions, Mike. So I think I've probably talked about it on the show before. Maybe that was years ago. I forget. So I was very much a late bloomer. 5'9", 150 in ninth grade, 6 foot 170 in 10th grade, 6'3", 210 in 11th grade. And then I had a good year as a junior in high school, 6'3", 210, but really wasn't fast enough to play defensive line for the powerhouse schools and wasn't big enough to play offensive line. So being a late bloomer, my offers ended up being scholarship offers to William & Mary in Delaware at the 1AA level, FCS now, and then I got recruited and offered spots at Harvard and Princeton in large part because of football. I had 1360 SATs. The valedictorian in my high school had 1550 SATs, did not get into Harvard or Princeton that year because I tell people this all the time, they could make the whole class if they wanted 1600 SAT valedictorian. They don't want that. They want you to have a certain level of academic accomplishment, but then have some other way that you can contribute to the university. Mine was going to be playing football. I got a couple handwritten letters from Penn State. First one was to go to camp there, but I knew I wouldn't run a good 40 time there. So I knew that going to camp would not help me. And then the second one, I think they mentioned something about walking on, but Penn State didn't really push the issue. If they had really, like they do now with James Franklin, if they had really pushed the issue and really fought hard for me to walk on, I would have absolutely considered it. But when you're in high school, you just think, I guess I'm not good enough. And I was very excited about the opportunity to go to an Ivy League school because of football and sort of jumped at that. So, that was my experience. Good question, Mike. Shout outs to Pizza Boy Brewing. Wow, I had a big Pizza Boy Brewing weekend as usual. DynastyFreaks.com. This is the best value in podcast advertising, I can assure you. You go to patreon.com/RTmedia. You sign up at the I think we're done here level for $100 a month, and you get shout outs at the end of every show. Make sure you check out my guy, Emery Hunt, breaking down all of the ACC top prospects on the College Draft podcast, including Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Gregory Rousseau, and how about Caleb Farley, the first college prospect to actually opt out of this season. Emery's going to be all over those guys on the College Draft podcast. Other than that, we'll have a little different schedule this week. Andrew on Tuesday, Greg on Thursday. That's why you need to make sure you're always subscribed to all of these shows, because you never know when we might change up the schedule on you a little bit to keep you honest. I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, rosstucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.